Hey Virgo, before we dive in, let's establish something crucial. Someone missing you doesn't mean they've changed. Someone regretting their choice doesn't mean they're capable of making better ones now. Someone feeling pulled toward you doesn't mean pulling them back in serves your peace. So, as we talk about what's happening with this person, keep your center. This is about information, not instruction. Distance has a way of clarifying things people couldn't see up close. When someone walks away, whether they initiated it or you did, whether it was mutual or messy, whether it was recent or ages ago, they carry an assumption with them, an assumption about what life will feel like without you, about how quickly they'll adjust, about whether the relief will outweigh the loss. And sometimes that assumption holds true. Sometimes the distance confirms the decision. Sometimes absence really does reveal that the connection wasn't as significant as it felt in the moment, but not always. Sometimes distance does the opposite. Sometimes it strips away all the noise and irritation and daily friction that obscured what was actually there. Sometimes absence doesn't make anything clearer, it just makes everything hurt. And that's where this person is right now. They walked away expecting one thing and experiencing something completely different. They thought they'd feel liberated, lighter, free from whatever complications you represented. Instead, they feel haunted, incomplete, like they left something essential behind and can't quite function properly without it. Do you feel this pulling at you too, from the other side? Share what you're sensing if it's already hitting you, because here's what's actually happening in their internal world. They're realizing the difference between what bothered them about being with you and what they actually valued about having you. And those two things, the irritations and the irreplaceables, they're not weighing the same anymore. All the small things that frustrated them when you were together, all the reasons they convinced themselves leaving made sense, all the justifications they used to make the separation feel rational, those things are fading, shrinking, losing their significance in comparison to what's missing now. Because when you're in something, when you're close enough to see all the imperfections and complications and day-to-day difficulties, it's easy to focus on what's not working, easy to amplify problems, easy to convince yourself that somewhere else, with someone else, in some other configuration, things would be easier or better or more aligned. But distance reveals the lie in that logic. Distance shows you what you actually had versus what you imagined you'd find elsewhere. And this person is getting that education right now, in real time, through the daily experience of your absence making itself known in ways they didn't predict. Have you ever left something and only then understood what it meant to you? Drop your experience below, because let me paint the specific picture of what missing you madly looks like. It's not just occasional thoughts. It's not just passing nostalgia. It's pervasive. It's the kind of missing that infiltrates everything. They'll be doing something completely unrelated, working, socializing, going through their routine, and suddenly you're there, a memory, a thought, a ghost of what used to exist between you showing up uninvited. Songs trigger them, places trigger them, smells and sounds and random associations trigger them. Everything becomes a reminder of what they chose to walk away from. They're comparing every interaction with other people gets measured against how it felt to interact with you. Every potential connection gets assessed through the lens of what existed between you. and nothing's measuring up, because here's what they're discovering. You weren't interchangeable. You weren't replaceable. The specific quality of your presence, your energy, your way of being with them, it wasn't something they could just find elsewhere with someone else. They thought it was. They assumed the connection you shared was common, that chemistry like that was easy to recreate, that what you brought to their life was standard rather than rare, but experience is teaching them otherwise. And that education hurts. Does knowing they're struggling change how you feel about the separation? Be honest about what's coming up, because here's what the magnetic pull actually indicates. It's not just emotional missing, it's visceral, physical. The kind of pull that makes logic irrelevant and distance feel intolerable. They want to reach out, they want to close the gap. They want to undo whatever created the separation and get back to something that resembles what you had. But they're fighting it, fighting the urge to contact you, fighting the desire to show up, fighting the magnetic force that's making staying away feel increasingly impossible. Why the fight? Multiple reasons. Pride, partially. Admitting they were wrong, that they made a mistake, that they misjudged the situation. It requires swallowing ego. Most people struggle to digest. Fear, definitely. Fear that you've moved on. Fear that the window's closed. Fear that even if they reached out, you'd reject them, or be indifferent, or have changed in ways that make reconnection impossible. Uncertainty, absolutely. Uncertainty about whether what they're feeling is genuine longing or just nostalgia. Uncertainty about whether going back would just recreate old problems. Uncertainty about whether the pull they feel is trustworthy guidance or just familiar comfort. So they're in this liminal space, wanting you intensely but not acting on it, feeling drawn back but not moving towards you, experiencing magnetic pull but resisting the motion it's creating. Can you sense this tension in them even from distance? Tell me what you're picking up, because I need to address what might be happening in you as you read this. Part of you might feel vindicated, like finally they're seeing what they lost. Finally, they're understanding what they walked away from. Finally, they're experiencing consequences for their choice. And that vindication, it's natural, human, understandable after being left or after having to create distance yourself. But be careful, because vindication isn't the same as wisdom. Satisfaction that they're hurting isn't the same as clarity about what serves you. Their regret doesn't obligate you to anything. Their missing you doesn't mean you have to let them back in. Their magnetic pull toward you doesn't create responsibility on your part to respond. This is information, data about where they are, but it doesn't dictate what you do next. Are you feeling pulled to respond to their energy? Write what your body's telling you. Because let's talk about what happens if they do reach out. If they finally overcome whatever's keeping them silent, if they make contact, if they express what they've been feeling, you're going to have a choice to make. And that choice needs to come from clarity, not from the relief of being wanted again. Ask yourself these questions before you respond. Has anything actually changed that would make reconnection different than what existed before? Or are they just missing you without having addressed the patterns that created problems? Because missing someone and being capable of healthier relationship with them are not the same thing. You can desperately want someone back and still bring all the same limitations that made it not work the first time. Am I considering this because I genuinely want them back? or because being missed feels validating after feeling dismissed or abandoned, because validation is a terrible reason to re-engage. It might feel good momentarily, but it doesn't create sustainable connection. What would I need to see demonstrated, not just said before, trusting this could work? Because words are cheap. Anyone can say they've changed, they've realized, they've grown. Actual changed behavior over sustained time is what matters. Can I handle them potentially disappointing me again if I open this door? Because if you let them back in, you're accepting risk that they'll repeat patterns, risk that the pull they feel now will fade once proximity removes the mystique of absence, risk that you'll end up hurt again. Which of these questions hits hardest? Let me know what you're wrestling with. Because here's what you also need to consider. While they've been missing you, what's been happening with you? Have you been healing, growing, building a life that works without them, creating peace in the space their absence left? If yes, if you've been doing genuine work, if you've been moving forward rather than just waiting for them to come back, think carefully about whether re-engaging disrupts that progress, whether letting them back in serves the person you've been becoming, or whether it pulls you back into dynamics you've outgrown. Because sometimes people come back exactly when you've finally let them go, exactly when you've stopped organizing your life around the possibility of their return, exactly when you found your footing without them. And their timing, their readiness doesn't mean it's your right timing. Doesn't mean you're obligated to receive them just because they're finally ready to show up differently. Your healing timeline doesn't have to sync with their regret timeline. Have you been healing in their absence? Share where you're at in your process. Because let's also address the possibility that you want them back too. Maybe you've been missing them equally. Maybe the separation has been teaching you the same lessons it's been teaching them. Maybe you've been feeling your own magnetic pull, your own regret about how things ended, your own desire to try again. If that's true, if this is mutual longing rather than one-sided pursuit, then the question becomes different. Not whether to receive them, but whether you can both do it differently this time. Can you have honest conversations about what didn't work before? Can you name patterns that need changing? Can you both take accountability for your respective contributions to whatever broke down? Can you create new agreements rather than just trying to resurrect what existed? Can you build something intentionally rather than just falling back into familiar but dysfunctional patterns? Because nostalgia isn't a foundation. Missing each other isn't a strategy. Magnetic pull isn't a guarantee of compatibility. What creates actual functional relationship is communication, effort, mutual commitment to growth, and willingness to do hard things when easy would be more comfortable. Are you both capable of that, or just capable of wanting each other? Get ruthlessly honest about the difference. Tell me which one you think is true. Because here's something nobody wants to acknowledge. Sometimes the magnetic pull is real and the missing is genuine and the regret is deep. And it still doesn't work. Sometimes people are right for each other in theory, but wrong in practice. Sometimes the chemistry is undeniable, but the compatibility is insufficient. Sometimes the love is real, but the capacity to sustain healthy partnership isn't there. And if that's the case, if reconnecting just recreates pain in different packaging, then the kindest thing for both of you is to let the pull exist without acting on it, to acknowledge the missing without using it as justification for going back, to respect what was without trying to force it into being again, because not every connection that matters is meant to last. Not every person you love is someone you can actually be with. Not every magnetic pull should be followed. Sometimes the growth is in feeling the pull and choosing yourself anyway. In honoring what was without sacrificing what you're becoming. In loving someone from distance because proximity would damage you both. Is that the truth you've been avoiding? Sit with that possibility, because ultimately here's what this comes down to. They're regretting. They're missing you. They're feeling pulled back toward what you had, and you get to decide what that means for you. You can receive them if it aligns with where you are. You can explore reconnection if you genuinely believe something different is possible. You can give it another chance if your gut says it's worth the risk, or you can honor their experience without making it your responsibility. You can acknowledge that they miss you without that creating obligation. You can appreciate that they've realized your value without needing to prove it by taking them back. Both responses are valid. Neither is better or worse. They're just different choices based on different internal clarity. So feel into it, check in with yourself honestly, ask the hard questions, and sit with uncomfortable answers, and then choose consciously, deliberately, from your knowing rather than from your loneliness or your hope or your need to be wanted. They're feeling a magnetic pull toward you, but you're the one who decides whether to let that pull close the distance. Choose wisely. Choose from wholeness. Choose what actually serves your peace, not just what feels good in the moment. You've got this, whatever you choose. I don't sell futures, I build architects. No predictions, just the raw truth for the tough ones. Stay magic, stay in the now.